The sky above Halvex 3 had never looked so helpless. Once a quiet, peaceful world known for its golden plains and crystal seas, it now trembled under the dark shadow of invasion. Fire rose from its cities, communication towers lay shattered, and the cries of the innocent echoed across broken streets. For centuries, Helvex had stood proudly under the protection of the Galactic Council, symbol of peace and neutrality in a chaotic galaxy. But none of that mattered anymore. The invaders were not here to talk. They were here to conquer, and no one was coming to stop them. The Council had gone silent, their fleets stretched thin by distant wars and fragile politics. Halvex was alone, its leaders desperate and afraid, gathered in a hidden bunker beneath the ruined capital. Most of their emergency systems were dead. Their calls for help bounced off abandoned satellites. But in the deepest part of the bunker, something ancient was reactivated, something forbidden, something old enough to be feared even by their ancestors. A communication device left over from the days of the collapse. It was dusty, glowing faintly, almost humming like it remembered pain. Etched on the device in forgotten script were the words, "Emergency Protocol 0, Deathworld Relay." No one truly knew what it meant. The Council had hidden all records of it. But with the invaders closing in, the Halvexian Prime Minister placed her hand on the panel and said two trembling words, "Send it." And so the signal was sent not to the Council, not to nearby allies, but into the dark. A pulse of raw, coded energy was launched through forgotten channels, echoing across deep space. Most thought the channel had long been dead. But it wasn't. The signal pierced through dust clouds, rogue sectors, and collapsed wormholes. It crossed systems no one had mapped in hundreds of years. And then it reached a part of space that no one dared to mention, anymore a place once called Sol. There, beyond the grave of Earth, in the black stillness of what was believed to be empty, a response flickered to life. Lights blinked on. Deep within an asteroid field, a sensor node long, buried and shielded, woke up. It processed the signal. In seconds, confirmed its code, and triggered the activation of a long-dormant machine. From a forgotten vault carved into the rock, a voice spoke, calm and cold. Terran Protocol 0 confirmed. Response initiated. Far away from Halvex, the stars began to shift. Small black objects started moving, silent, unseen, fast. They moved like shadows between stars, blinking in and out of view, sending encrypted data to each other through tight beam relays. These weren't scouts. They weren't diplomats. These were watchers, machines designed to monitor the galaxy without being seen. And now they had a target, coordinates locked. Halvex was marked. On the planet, the people had no idea what they had awakened. The Prime Minister believed she had called for help from some forgotten ally. The military officers believed the signal had failed. But above them, far past the clouds, a rift began to form. A hole in space itself, black, wide, and humming with energy. And then something emerged. One ship, dark, massive, silent. It did not broadcast a message. It did not flash lights. It simply hovered in orbit. Watching the invaders noticed first. Their scanners went wild. Systems shut down. Their fleets scrambled to reposition. But before they could react, the Terran ship moved. It didn't fire missiles. It didn't launch fighters. It simply activated a pulse. One sounded deep metallic boom echoed across the atmosphere. And with it, the invaders' ships shut down, their engines going cold, their weapons locked, their lights dimmed. Panic spread among them like wildfire. They had never seen anything like it. And then came the second ship, and the third, and 100 more. One by one, Terran vessels emerged from the void, each shaped like an ancient nightmare, forged not for show, but for war. Not beautiful, not sleek efficient, terrifying and merciless. Still, no message was sent. Not a single word. Just silence. And the unstoppable presence of a fleet the galaxy thought extinct. Aboard the Halvexian command bunker, screens lit up with unknown symbols. The Prime Minister stared in disbelief. "Who are they?" someone whispered. No one answered. But the truth was already crawling down their spines. These weren't mercenaries. They weren't old allies. They weren't from the council. They were something else. Something born from pain, betrayal, and memory. They were Deathworlders. And they had answered the call. In orbit, the Terran fleet moved again. Small black drones descended like falling stars, scanning the planet, mapping every corner, every bunker, every invader. Then, with surgical precision, the fleet struck not at the planet, but at the invaders. One by one, the enemy's ships were shattered in perfect silence. No explosions, no fire, just clean erasure. What had taken the Halvexian army weeks to resist, the Terrans ended in less than 10 minutes. When it was over, not a single invader remained. The skies cleared, the silence deepened. Then finally, a signal was broadcast. One word, one voice. Human, secured. That was it. No introduction, no thanks, no message of unity. Just a confirmation. And then, the Deathworlder fleet did not leave. It stayed, hovering in orbit, waiting, watching. The people of Halvex looked up at the sky and saw what they had awakened. A force that didn't come for politics, didn't ask for power. It came because a long time ago, Earth had been abandoned. And now, it remembered. The signal had been sent in desperation. But what answered it? Would change the galaxy forever. For 3 full days, the skies above Halvex 3 remained covered in shadows. Shadows made by ships too massive to measure, too silent to ignore, and too deadly to challenge. The Deathworlders had not come to celebrate, had not sent gifts, or banners, or ambassadors. They had come with precision, force, and silence. And they were still there. The Halvexian people waited, watching from shattered rooftops and cratered hills. Wondering why these terrifying war machines had not yet left, there was no sound, no movement. Just the weight of something too old and too powerful to understand. But deep inside the black ships, something was changing. Machines were waking. Data was pouring in. The enemy forces had been removed, but that had only been step 1. The true purpose of the Terran response was far more than rescue. It was observation, judgment, and something even worse. Memory. On the 4th day, the Deathworlders finally moved. A single ship descended slowly, piercing through the clouds like a falling mountain. It landed in the middle of what used to be Halvex's capital square. The air shimmered around it, not from heat, but from the unnatural energy that pulsed from its hull. The people gathered at a distance, trembling, unsure whether to run or bow. Then, without warning, the ship opened, not with a ramp, but with a silent fold in space. And from the darkness stepped 3 figures. They were not machines. They were not monsters. They were human, but they moved like ghosts. Dressed in matte black armor with no rank, no flags, and no smiles, they stood tall with a presence that bent the air itself. The crowd held its breath. Then the tallest one spoke not loudly, not angrily, but like someone who didn't need to shout to be obeyed. "We are Terran Directive, Sector Responders. Deathworld Origin, you called." We answered. Gasps ran through the crowd. It was true. The old stories, the warnings, the legends of Earth. All of it was real. And now, the lost children of humanity had returned. No longer weak, no longer begging, no longer ignored. The Prime Minister of Halvex stepped forward, fear in her eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. We didn't know who would. "Hear the signal," she said softly. The lead Deathworlder nodded once. "You weren't supposed to know. You weren't supposed to use it. That protocol was buried for a reason." Right. The air thickened as the meaning hit everyone at once. Signal was not a request for help. It was a summon, final cry that could only be answered by the one force the galaxy had tried to forget, and Earth had not forgotten. The humans began deploying black machines into the ruins. They moved with eerie grace, floating over debris, scanning, building strange towers of light in key points across the city. The people of Halvex watched as their streets were transformed, not into weapons, but into observation grids. Drones drifted overhead, silently collecting data from everything: burned ships, dead soldiers, council records. No one dared to interfere. This wasn't occupation, it was evaluation. The Deathworlders weren't here to conquer. They were here to see if Halvex deserved to be remembered or erased. Elsewhere in the galaxy, panic was growing. Council members scrambled to deny the events. Broadcasts were censored. Official reports claimed Halvex was still under council control, but the truth spread faster than lies. Pirates, traitors, refugees, they all carried the same whispers. Earth is back. And they're not alone. They have fleets, have weapons, and they have a mission. Across the stars, planets that had once voted to exile Earth now shook in fear. It's not because of invasion, but because of judgment. The Deathworlders didn't need to fire to win. Their presence alone made the galaxy pause, rethink, and panic, back on Halvex. The Prime Minister was invited aboard the Terran ship. She entered with a group of advisors, but only she was allowed beyond the first level. Inside, it was cold, dark, and strangely alive. Walls hummed with energy. Lights blinked like old stars. And then she was brought before a chamber wide and endless, lined with faces. Not real ones. Projections. Memories. Images of Earth's collapse. Cities in ruin. People crying for help. Children behind cracked glass. Screens showing council responses. No aid approved. Request denied. Earth status, abandoned. She fell to her knees. These weren't just memories. They were receipts. Records the council had buried, but Earth had kept. Then, from above, a voice spoke. Halvex was neutral, but it voted. It turned away. It survived while Earth burned. So now we ask, why should you remain? It was not a threat. It was a test. The Deathworlders weren't here to destroy Halvex. They wanted to know if it remembered what it had done. Prime Minister, trembling, answered the only way she could. We were wrong, forgot, but we remember now. We ask not for mercy, but for a second chance. Silence followed. Then, slowly, the projections faded. The doors opened, bade, and she was allowed to leave. Outside, the Terran ship began transmitting a signal knot, a warning, not a weapon. 8 beacon. Floating in orbit above Halvex, the beacon shined with a single glowing mark. A red skull, Earth's ancient symbol, surrounded by 7 stars. Below it, 2 words blinked in every language. Watched, redeemed. Halvex had been judged. And, for now, it had been spared. But the Deathworlders were only getting started. Across the galaxy, other worlds had voted. Other planets had turned away. And now, Earth was moving again. This time, not as a memory. This time, as a power no one could. Stop. Far from the smoking ruins of Halvex, deep within the shining towers of Council Prime, the galaxy's oldest leaders sat in silence. Their grand chamber, once a place of power and order, now felt like a cage. The signal had been confirmed. Halvex had fallen under Terran protection, and more terrifying than that, it had been judged and spared by Earth's Deathworlders. The Council had kept the truth hidden for centuries. They had buried Earth's history, erased its name from the archives, and silenced anyone who spoke of its fall. But now that illusion was cracking. Behind the cracks, a storm waited. Some council members still tried to speak calmly, to call for reason. Perhaps they only came for Halvex, whispered one elder. Perhaps this was a one-time event. But deep down, they all knew the truth. Earth had returned with purpose. Purpose never stops with one world. Outside the chamber, the halls buzzed with hidden panic. Staff whispered rumors of strange ships appearing on long-dead trade routes. Merchant convoys had gone missing. Mining outposts had picked up brief signals in ancient Terran code. And in the quiet between systems, old satellites once thought deactivated had begun blinking red. Earth hadn't just answered a call. It had activated a network. One that had slept in the dark, watching, waiting. And now, every planet that once raised its hand to vote against Earth was being mapped, not bombed, not attacked. It's just marked. Watched. The Council's military arm, the Central Defense Corps, scrambled to issue a response. Fleets were repositioned. Patrols doubled. Propaganda was released to the public. The rumors of Earth's return are false, they said. The Halvex situation is under control. But across the stars, people weren't watching council messages. Anymore, they were watching the skies. What they saw terrified them more than any broadcast. Silent black ships, fleets without names, drones with no known origin. They didn't attack. They didn't speak. But they hovered, waiting, watching. And then, in Sector 9, once a proud council, Colonia beacon was found. It floated just above orbit. One side showed a bright red skull, the other, a phrase no one could ignore. Earth remembers. Inside, the council chamber. The panic turned to blame. Some accused the Terran threat of being fake, internal rebellion using old myths to scare the galaxy. Others accused Halvex of lying, pretending to be attacked just to summon Earth. But every day that passed without contact, without control, made one truth more clear. This was real. The illusion was dying. And the council was running out of lies. Then came the final blow. On the largest media station in council space, a sudden override took control. Every screen, every speaker, every interface was hijacked, the feed showed. Not a message, not a threat, but a memory. It was raw footage, untouched, recorded over 300 years ago. Earth cities burning, children crying for medicine, message from Earth begging for supplies. And then, vote. The full record of the Council's rejection. Each face, each voice, each world that said, deny. The galaxy had never seen this before, and now they couldn't unsee it. That day, riots broke out on 32 Council worlds. Citizens demanded answers. Soldiers refused orders. Whispers turned into rage, and somewhere far beyond their reach, Earth watched. It didn't need to fire a single shot. The truth was more powerful than any weapon. The Council scrambled. They tried to shut the feed down, tried to spin the leak as enemy misinformation. But it was too late. The illusion was broken. The lie was dead. And now, Earth had something far more dangerous than ships. It had the galaxy's attention. Virelia Prime had always believed itself untouchable. It was rich, proud, and loyal to the Galactic Council since the beginning.
Alice.
Its towers touched the clouds, its people lived in perfect peace, and its leaders scoffed at the idea of war. When the first rumors of Earth's return began, the Virelian High Chancellor called it a dying myth from a dead planet. But myths have power, and sometimes they return not as stories, but as consequences. The Deathworlders arrived without sound, without warning. In the middle of the night, the stars above Virelia Prime twisted open and gave birth to a fleet so vast it made the sky burn red. No weapons fired, no demands made. The Terran ships just hovered there, black, quiet, and terrifying. Within minutes, the planet's defense systems collapsed. Not from attack, but from fear. Entire battalions refused to take up arms. The people stared upward in silence, as if they already knew that resistance meant extinction. The Chancellor demanded answers, but no one replied. Then a single Terran voice echoed across every channel, every screen, every device. You voted. You chose. You turned away. You were seen. Panic spread like wildfire. Council enforcers tried to jam the signal, but it was coming from above, not below. Ancient Terran satellites buried deep beneath the planet's surface had reactivated. Virelia wasn't just a target. It was already marked. Drones descended across its cities, scanning data, projecting holograms of old Earth cities in flames, showing the Virelian vote that exiled Earth. The people screamed, not from anger, but from shame, because now the truth couldn't be hidden. Their leaders had let Earth die, and the Deathworlders hadn't come for revenge. They'd come to show them what silence had cost. And then came the final act. From the largest Terran ship, a beacon was launched. It landed softly in the center of Virelia's capital, Upon its surface were just two words, glowing red: never forgotten. The Terran fleet did not fire. They did not stay. They simply left. But in their wake, they left behind something more powerful than war. Judgment, and Veralia Prime would never forget it. The galaxy watched as one of its proudest worlds was broken without a single shot. Across 100 systems, fear began to grow, not of death, but of truth, because Earth had returned, and it had come not just to respond, but to rewrite the story of the stars. The stars trembled in silence as the Terran fleet moved across the edge of known space, leaving no signal, no path, no broadcast behind, only fear. System after system went quiet the moment the Deathworlder ships appeared in orbit. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't demand surrender. They simply arrived, and yet their presence alone sent waves of terror through the highest governments and the lowest colonies. These weren't warships built to scare. These were machines of perfect, cold design created by a species that had learned to survive on a planet designed to kill them. No markings, no lights, no need for warnings. And that silence was more terrifying than 1,000 war cries. On the planet Chorus 9, an old mining colony forgotten by the Council, farmers looked to the sky and dropped their tools as a black shape the size of a city blocked out their sun. There was no announcement, just the low hum of something ancient passing overhead. The people gathered outside, whispering the stories passed down in secret, the stories of Earth, of betrayal, of the humans who had been cast out into the void. No one dared to speak above a whisper. They all knew the fleet above them was not a threat. It was a reminder. And then the lights went out across the colony, not from attack, but from a silent scan that reached into every device, every database, every hidden vote ever cast. Seconds later, a drone descended and released a message in every known language. History is not erased. Earth remembers. No one moved. No one resisted. Because they understood something terrible and beautiful, this fleet wasn't here to destroy them. It was here to judge them, and Chorus 9 passed that test. The ships left just as they came. In silence, but not every world was as lucky. In the Renari cluster, a wealthy trade hub that had grown fat and cruel during Earth's isolation, the Deathworlder fleet didn't descend gently. It arrived with calculated formation, surrounding the system in less than 12 minutes. The Council's ships stationed there scrambled to prepare, but it was already too late. Every defense system failed. Every ship was paralyzed. No weapons fired. No shields activated. The Renari Council tried to send a message in apology, a plea, but the Terran fleet jammed it before it ever reached the stars. Then, without a single word spoken, the humans launched hundreds of black drones. These drones did not attack. They hovered, scanned, recorded, and remembered. Moments later, giant projections lit the sky over the capital city. Footage of Earth's dying cities, Earth's rejected signals, Earth's forgotten screams. And over it all, the faces of the Renari senators voting against aid, turning away, laughing. The people cried out in rage, not against the Deathworlders, but against their own. The streets burned, not from fire from above, but from truth from within. The Terran ships never fired. They never needed to. Their power wasn't just in weapons, it was in knowing, in remembering, and in making sure the rest of the galaxy did too. Everywhere the fleet went, it said the same thing without ever speaking. Earth had not died. Earth had not forgotten. Earth had not forgiven. The Council tried everything. To stop the spread-locking communications, jamming signals, even offering peace treaties. But you cannot negotiate with a shadow. You cannot reason with memory. You cannot silence a fleet that speaks only through action. The Terran Armada moved like a ghost, never staying too long, never striking unless provoked. But its pattern was clear. It was visiting every system that had once voted against Earth. One by one, planet by planet, not to destroy, but to remind them that the galaxy had once turned its back on a world that begged for help. And that now, that world had returned, stronger than any of them could have imagined. The Deathworlders didn't need to conquer. They simply showed up, and the galaxy trembled. The Meraxis system was proud, stubborn, and armed to the teeth. had wealth, fleets, and a long-standing hatred for the name Earth. When whispers of the Deathworlders began spreading across the galaxy, the leaders of Meraxis didn't panic, they prepared. "Let the ghosts come," their warlord declared. "We'll remind them who rules now." Thousands of ships were deployed across orbit, weapon platforms warmed up. Anti-Terran propaganda flooded every broadcast. They believed they were ready. But the truth was, no system could ever be ready for what Earth had become. When the first Terran scout ship entered the system, it didn't hide or sneak. It flew straight through the heart of Meraxis space, ignoring all warnings. It didn't respond to hails. It didn't change course. The Meraxis fleet launched interceptors and, in under 12 seconds, every one of them was gone. It's not destroyed, not shot down, simply gone. No wreckage, no signal. It's just wiped from the stars like they never existed. That was when the full Terran fleet arrived, dripping through space like a wave of living shadow. Their formation was perfect, their silence louder than any roar. The Meraxis ships opened fire first. It didn't matter. The Deathworlders moved. Like thoughts, their ships folding through space in unnatural ways. They didn't just dodge missiles, they made them vanish. And then they answered. One by one, they began disabling the Meraxis weapons, not with blasts, but with precision. Entire warships were taken offline in seconds. Gunships were pulled from the sky by invisible force. In minutes, the proud defenses of Meraxis were reduced to floating husks. The Terran fleet surrounded the capital planet. Not one shot was fired at the surface. Instead, drones descended and triggered global broadcasts showing once again the vote, the betrayal, the moment when Meraxis turned its back on Earth while its cities burned. And this time, the people of Meraxis saw everything. Their leaders had lied. Their warlord had rewritten history. And Earth had come not to conquer but to show them the truth in full daylight. On the surface, riots erupted. Armories were overrun. Even military commanders began surrendering not to Terran soldiers, but to their own citizens, who finally realized they'd been ruled by cowards. The Deathworlders didn't need to land. They just waited. As Meraxis tore itself apart from the inside, then when the flames died down and the skies went silent, the Terran flagship sent one last transmission. You wanted war? You got the truth. And with that, they vanished into deep space, leaving behind a broken system and a message that would never be forgotten. For months, the galaxy had lived in fear of the silent ships, fear of the Red Skull beacons, fear of being remembered by a planet they thought had died long ago. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare them for what happened next. On the 200th rotation since the first Terran fleet was seen over Halvex, every screen in the galaxy suddenly flickered. No matter the planet, no matter the system, no matter how protected military bases, private networks, even deep space stations, they all went black. And then a signal. Not from a known relay. Not from council servers. It came from nowhere. From everywhere. And on every screen appeared the symbol, the red skull surrounded by 7 stars, the new crest of the Deathworlders.
Native voice.
Not loud, not angry, but ancient, clear, human. This is Earth. We remember everything. The galaxy froze. The voice continued, calm and deadly. You voted against us. You left us to burn. You watched as our people begged for water, for medicine, for hope. And you turned your backs. Images followed cities in ruins, starving children, old broadcast pleas from a forgotten time. We begged, you denied. We died, but we were born again. In the fire, the images changed. Now Terran ships move through dark space.
A Deathworlder.
Fleets, silent and massive. We do not seek war, do not ask for vengeance. We ask only for memory, for truth, for every world to remember what was done, what was allowed. Then came the final words. We are not your enemy, but we are your consequence. Choose what you will become next. The feed cut instantly, and the galaxy changed forever. On every world, silence followed. Some people cried, some screamed, some fell to their knees. Entire governments collapsed in a matter of hours, not from weapons, but from truth. The council itself went dark. Dozens of systems declared independence, refusing to be part of the old structure that had turned its back on Earth, and in hidden chambers across the stars. Leaders whispered to each other not about survival, but about redemption.
Goes.
They all understood now. The Deathworlders were not coming to rule. They were coming to witness, to remember, and to ensure no one ever forgot again. Earth hadn't just spoken, it had awakened the stars. The old galaxy had died. Not with a bang, not in flames, but in silence, under the weight of its own forgotten sins. When Earth spoke, something ancient broke across the stars. The illusion of power, the idea that the Council ruled without challenge, it shattered. Now the galaxy stood on the edge of something new. The Deathworlders had not claimed a single world, yet their shadows stretched across every star system. Earth had not dropped armies onto planets, but their truth had overthrown kings. Across hundreds of systems, monuments were torn down. Council. Flags were burned. Old leaders fled or begged for forgiveness. New voices rose, young leaders, freedom fighters. Civilians once silenced, calling for a galaxy that no longer ignored its own history. Earth had given them no orders, only a reminder. We remember, and that memory was spreading like wildfire. Worlds once proud of their silence were now ashamed. Systems that once voted against Earth now lit up their skies with Terran symbols, hoping to be seen not as enemies, but as allies. But Earth didn't respond. The Deathworlders had vanished again, as suddenly as they arrived. Their fleets disappeared beyond the rim, into the deep black void. No new broadcasts, no threats, just silence. But this time, it wasn't feared. It was respected because now everyone understood. Earth didn't need to rule the stars. It had already done something far greater. It had made the galaxy remember. On Earth, deep beneath the hardened mountains, the High Command watched the feeds. Planets changing, empires falling. 1,000 systems finally seeing the truth. They spoke little, just watched. Mission complete. They had not come for revenge. They had come for balance. And now, they had given the galaxy a chance to choose fear or redemption. Lies or truth. The future or extinction. The command screens powered down. The last recorded message stamped. Across the logs in red, the stars remember now. Stand down, let them decide. And so, for the first time in centuries, the galaxy moved forward, not with war, but with memory. The Deathworlders didn't need to return, because now every world knew. If they ever forgot what happened again, if they ever let fear or power blind them once more, then Earth would come back. And next time, it would not be quiet.